Judge Alastair Finch's courtroom is his kingdom. The walls are paneled in a dark, imposing mahogany that has soaked up decades of whispered pleas and stifled sobs, and now radiates a cold indifference. The air itself is heavy, thick with the scent of old paper, floor polish, and the faint, metallic tang of fear. High above, the seal of the state is carved into the wood, a golden eagle with its wings spread wide, looking more like a predator than a symbol of justice. But the true predator sits on the throne. Judge Finch is a man carved from granite and prejudice. His black robe is not a garment of office, it is a shroud, an extension of his own dark heart. He wears it like armor, a shield against the grubby realities of the people who parade before him. His face is a permanent sneer, etched into fleshy jowls that tremble with indignation whenever his absolute authority is questioned, however slightly. Today, his gaze, small and sharp like chips of obsidian, is fixed on the boy at the defendant's table. Marcus. He is 17. A boy trying desperately to wear the skin of a man, draped in a suit borrowed from his grandfather's closet. The jacket is too broad in the shoulders, the trousers too short at the ankle. It is a suit of ghosts, a costume of respectability that feels hollow in this suffocating chamber. His hands are clasped so tightly on the table that his knuckles are white mountains on a dark landscape. He flinches every time the judge's voice, a booming cannonade of condescension, echoes through the room. So, this is the menace to society, Finch begins, his voice dripping with a theatrical sarcasm that he mistakes for wit. He does not look at the public defender. He never does. They are gnats to him, buzzing annoyances in the grand theater of his power. He speaks directly to the jury, his jury, a collection of tired faces he has already molded with his opening remarks, his subtle gestures, his carefully curated air of unimpeachable wisdom. A young man of, what is it, Mr. Pike? He turns to the prosecutor, Donovan Pike, a man whose ambition has corroded his spine, leaving him perpetually stooped in a posture of deference to the judge. Pike, sleek and hungry as a weasel, stands immediately. 17, Your Honor. Allegedly involved in the armed robbery of a convenience store. Allegedly, Finch repeats, drawing the word out, tasting it, then spitting it out like spoiled meat. Of course. We must maintain the pretense of doubt, must we not? He smiles, a brief, predatory flash of teeth. The jury does not smile back, but a few of them shift uncomfortably, their gazes sliding from the judge's imperious face to the terrified boy in the ill-fitting suit. Next to Marcus sits his grandmother, Eleanor Vance. She is a study in stillness. While the courtroom hums with tension, while lawyers shuffle papers and the court reporter's fingers fly across her machine, Eleanor is a point of absolute calm. She sits ramrod straight, her back not touching the chair. Her hands, weathered and elegant, rest in her lap, one over the other. She wears a simple navy blue dress, a string of modest pearls at her neck. Her hair is a crown of silver, neatly pinned. She looks like a woman who has come from a church service, a quiet pillar of her community, out of place in this temple of institutional cruelty. She does not look at the judge. Her eyes, dark and deep and full of a history the room cannot comprehend, are fixed on her grandson. She is his anchor in this storm. The public defender, a young woman named Sarah Jenkins, rises to her feet. She is barely 5 years out of law school, her suit a shade too bright for the courtroom's somber palette, her face earnest and etched with a nervous energy. She is a true believer, a soldier of justice armed with a cardboard sword against a dragon. Your Honor, she starts, her voice trembling slightly. The defense maintains that this is a case of mistaken identity. Marcus has no prior record. He is an honor student. He is the captain of his track team. Finch holds up a hand, a fleshy, dismissive gesture that silences her more effectively than a shout. Miss Jenkins, is it? Yes, Your Honor. Miss Jenkins, I have read the file. I have seen the evidence. I am familiar with the narrative you are attempting to construct. He leans forward, his bulk straining the fabric of his robe. The narrative of the good boy from a bad neighborhood. The promising athlete led astray. It is a tired story, Miss Jenkins. And frankly, this court has grown weary of it. The cruelty is casual, delivered with the bored air of a man swatting a fly. It is designed to humiliate, to strip Sarah Jenkins of her professional standing, to show everyone in the room, the jury, the gallery, her client, that she is powerless here. Sarah's face flushes with a mixture of anger and shame. Your Honor, I have witnesses to his character. His coach, his teachers. Character witnesses, Finch scoffs. How lovely. Are they here to testify that he was not at the scene of the crime? Do they have an alibi that can be corroborated by something other than the fond memories of a doting teacher? His coach can confirm he was at track practice until 6 p.m, and the robbery occurred at 6:15, 5 miles away. Finch waves his hand again. Details, details. A fast runner, you say? Captain of the track team. Perhaps he simply ran very, very quickly. A snort of laughter comes from the prosecution's table. Pike smothers it with a cough, but the damage is done. The judge has made a joke. The judge has turned the boy's one point of pride, his athletic achievement, into a weapon against him. Eleanor Vance's posture does not change. Not an inch. But a muscle in her jaw tightens, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift. She continues to watch her grandson, her gaze a shield. The trial is a farce, a piece of grim theater directed by a tyrant. Pike presents the state's case with oily confidence. The evidence is pathetic. A single eyewitness, an elderly woman who was 50 feet away, at dusk, without her glasses. Her description to the police was, a tall, black youth in a dark hoodie. A description that fits half the boys in Marcus's neighborhood. Marcus was picked up 2 blocks from his home an hour later, wearing a dark hoodie because it was a cool evening and he was walking home from the bus stop. That was it. That was the entire foundation of the state's case. No weapon was found. No stolen money was recovered. No fingerprints at the scene matched his. Sarah Jenkins tries to point this out during her cross-examination. She is gentle with the elderly witness, trying to coax out the inconsistencies in her memory. Ma'am, you said the perpetrator was tall. Can you estimate how tall? The woman squints at Marcus. About his height, I suppose. And you said he was wearing a hoodie. Can you describe it? It was dark. Black, maybe. Or navy blue. Like the one Marcus was wearing when he was arrested. Yes, just like that. Pike nods sagely from his table. Sarah presses on. But you can't be certain it was him. You couldn't see his face clearly. Objection, Pike says lazily, not even bothering to stand. Asked and answered. Sustained, Finch booms. Move on, Miss Jenkins. You are badgering the witness. Your Honor, I am simply trying to establish the unreliability of. You are trying the patience of this court, Finch snarls, his mask of bored amusement slipping to reveal the raw anger beneath. I have given you a great deal of latitude, counselor, far more than you deserve. Do not mistake my generosity for weakness. Ask another question or sit down. Defeated, Sarah Jenkins whispers, no further questions. She walks back to her table, her shoulders slumped. She gives Marcus a small, apologetic look. He just stares at his hands. Eleanor's gaze shifts, for the first time, from her grandson to the judge. She studies him. She is not a lawyer, not a court official. But she is a student of men. She has spent a lifetime reading them, understanding their vanities, their fears, their weaknesses. And in Alistair Finch, she sees a man hollowed out by his own ego. A man who mistakes cruelty for strength, and power for wisdom. A man who is, in his own way, more imprisoned than anyone he has ever sentenced. The trial proceeds, a slow, inevitable march toward a predetermined conclusion. Sarah calls Marcus's track coach to the stand. He is a good man, earnest and passionate. He swears that Marcus was with him, on the field, until 6 o'clock. There is no way, the coach says, his voice ringing with conviction, absolutely no way that boy could have gotten from my practice field to the corner of Elm and Main in 15 minutes. Not unless he can fly. During the cross-examination, Pike is merciless. Coach Miller, you are fond of the defendant, are you not? He's a good kid. A great athlete. Yes, I'm fond of him. So fond, perhaps, that you might be inclined to protect him. To bend the truth a little to help him out of a jam. Objection. Sarah cries, leaping to her feet. Counsel is impugning the witness's character. Overruled, Finch says, a bored wave of his hand. The witness will answer the question. Coach Miller looks stunned. I am under oath. I would not lie. Pike smiles. Of course not. But memory can be a funny thing, can't it? Are you absolutely certain it was 6 p.m. when he left? Not 5:45. Not 5:50. Do you punch a time clock, coach? No, but... So you are relying on your memory. A memory clouded by your affection for this young man. A man you want to see succeed. Pike turns to the jury. No further questions. He has done his job. He has planted the seed of doubt. Not about Marcus's guilt, but about the credibility of anyone who would defend him. The system is a boa constrictor, and it is tightening its coils. Every attempt to struggle, every plea for reason, only makes it squeeze harder. The closing arguments are a formality. Pike paints Marcus as a budding superpredator, a wolf in sheep's clothing, hiding his criminal nature behind a facade of good grades and athletic prowess. He speaks of the sanctity of the community, the fear of the elderly, the thin blue line holding back the chaos. It is a speech he has given 100 times. It is effective. It is poison. Sarah Jenkins, in her closing, is passionate. Her voice cracks with emotion as she speaks of reasonable doubt. She points to the gaping holes in the prosecution's case, the lack of physical evidence, the flimsy identification. She pleads with the jury to look at the boy, not the stereotype. Look at him, she begs. He is not a monster. He is a child. A child whose future you hold in your hands. The jury looks. But they do not see Marcus. They see the dark hoodie. They hear the judge's dismissive tone. They feel the weight of expectation. And they are afraid. Judge Finch gives his instructions to the jury, his voice a low, rumbling monotone. But his words are carefully chosen, subtly guiding them toward the conclusion he desires. He speaks of the totality of the circumstances and the burden of proof, but he frames it all in a way that makes acquittal seem like a dereliction of civic duty. The jury is out for less than an hour. It is a death sentence for hope. When they file back into the jury box, their faces are grim, resolved. They refuse to make eye contact with the defendant's table. Marcus begins to tremble, a low-grade tremor that starts in his hands and spreads through his entire body. Eleanor reaches out and places her hand on his arm. Her touch is firm, steadying. It does not offer false hope. It offers strength. The foreman, a tired-looking man in a wrinkled shirt, stands and hands a slip of paper to the bailiff. The bailiff carries it to the bench. The silence in the courtroom is absolute, a physical presence. Finch unfolds the paper, his expression unreadable. He glances at it for a fraction of a second. A flicker of grim satisfaction crosses his face before he smooths it back into a mask of judicial neutrality. On the charge of armed robbery, we the jury find the defendant. The foreman's voice is flat, devoid of emotion, guilty. A strangled sob escapes from the gallery, from Marcus's mother. Marcus himself seems to collapse inward, the borrowed suit suddenly looking like a giant's clothes on a shrunken frame. Sarah Jenkins reaches out to touch his shoulder, but he doesn't seem to notice. His eyes are wide with disbelief and terror. Eleanor Vance does not cry. She does not gasp. She simply squeezes her grandson's arm, a silent promise that this is not over. Finch bangs his gavel once, a sharp crack that cuts through the rising murmur. Order. Order in this court. He waits for the room to settle, savoring the moment. This is his drug. This absolute, life-altering power. Sentencing will be carried out immediately, he announces, dispensing with the usual waiting period. He wants to finish this. He wants to see the final despair dawn on their faces. Sarah Jenkins stammers, Your Honor, we ask for leniency. Given his age, his lack of a prior record. Finch cuts her off with a glare. Leniency. For an armed predator who terrorizes the elderly. Miss Jenkins, you mistake this court for a Sunday school picnic. The law provides for a maximum sentence of 25 years for this offense. And it is the opinion of this court that the maximum sentence is not only appropriate, but necessary. He turns his full attention to Marcus. His voice drops, becoming a venomous whisper that carries to every corner of the room. You are a cancer on this community, young man. And it is my duty to cut you out. I am sentencing you to 25 years in the state's maximum security penitentiary. No possibility of parole. He leans forward, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. I want you to think about that. 25 years. You will be a middle-aged man when you get out. If you get out, the world you know will be gone. Your youth will be a distant memory, devoured by the concrete and steel I am sending you to. This is his masterpiece of cruelty. He is not just passing a sentence. He is trying to annihilate a soul. He looks past Marcus, his gaze landing on Eleanor. And this is where he makes his fatal mistake. This is where his arrogance writes a check his power cannot cash. And you, madam, he says, his voice dripping with condescension. The matriarch of this family. He pauses for effect. You should have taught him better. You should have instilled in him some respect for the law, for his elders. But what can one expect? He lets the question hang in the air, a foul and poisonous thing. The apple, he concludes, with a smug, knowing look at the jury, doesn't fall far from the tree, does it? It is a line he has used before. It is his closing flourish, his little jab at the families of the condemned. But he has never said it to a woman like Eleanor Vance. For the first time, Eleanor's composure breaks. But it does not break into tears. It breaks into something else entirely. Something cold and hard and dangerous. Her back, already straight, becomes a rod of steel. Her eyes, which had been fixed on her grandson, now lift and lock onto Judge Alastair Finch. The warmth, the grandmotherly concern, vanishes from them. What remains is a focused, analytical glare. It is the look of a predator that has just identified its prey. Finch, basking in the glow of his own perceived brilliance, does not notice the shift. He is raising his gavel for the final, triumphant blow. The blow that will seal a boy's fate and reaffirm his own godhood. This court is ADJ. Click. The sound is not loud. It is a small, precise noise. The sound of a well-oiled lock disengaging. It comes from a heavy oak door at the side of the courtroom, a door marked, Judge's Chambers, Private. A door no one but the judge and his personal staff ever uses during a session. The door swings inward, slowly, silently. Two men step into the courtroom. They are not lawyers. They are not cops. They are something else. They wear identical, dark, impeccably tailored suits that seem to absorb the light. Their shoes make no sound on the marble floor. Their faces are impassive, their eyes constantly scanning the room, assessing, categorizing, dismissing. They radiate an aura of quiet, absolute authority that makes Judge Finch's blustering seem like a child's tantrum. The entire courtroom holds its breath. Finch's gavel hovers in midair. His face, which had been flushed with victory, is now turning a blotchy, furious red. What is the meaning of this? He bellows, his voice cracking with rage. Who dares interrupt my court? Bailiff, remove these men. The bailiff, a portly man nearing retirement, takes a half-step forward, then freezes. He looks at the two men, then at the judge, and a primal sense of self-preservation tells him to stay exactly where he is. The two men ignore the judge completely. Their eyes find Eleanor Vance. They give a slight, almost imperceptible nod. And then, Eleanor stands. She moves with a slow, deliberate grace that commands the attention of the entire room. Her voice, when she speaks, is not loud. It is not filled with emotion. It is calm, clear, and carries the chilling weight of ultimate authority. I do, Alastair. She uses his first name. The lack of the honorific judge or your honor is a shocking breach of protocol, a slap in the face more stunning than any physical blow. Finch is speechless, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. Eleanor reaches into the simple, unassuming handbag that has been sitting in her lap. She withdraws a small, black leather wallet. It is not the kind that holds cash or credit cards. It is a badge holder. With a flick of her wrist, she flips it open. The light from the high courtroom windows catches the object inside. It is not a police shield. It is a heavy, gold-colored badge, circular, with a fierce eagle at its center, clutching a compass rose. Engraved around the edge are words that strike a chord of fear and awe in the hearts of those who know what they mean. She holds it up, not for the whole room to see, but aiming it directly at the bench. Directly at Alastair Finch. Eleanor Vance, she says, her voice as cold and sharp as breaking ice. Central Intelligence Agency. Directorate of Operations. She pauses, letting the words sink in, letting the identity she has kept hidden for decades settle over the room like a shroud. Retired, she adds. But not, it seems, forgotten. The transformation is absolute. The frail, heartbroken grandmother is gone. In her place stands a figure of immense, terrifying power. The temperature in the room seems to drop 10 degrees. Alastair Finch's face goes from red to purple to a sickly, chalky white. The blood drains from it so fast he looks like he might faint. His hand, still holding the gavel, begins to shake. He stares at the badge, then at Eleanor's face, and a dawning, horrific understanding fills his eyes. He has not just insulted a grieving grandmother. He has not just railroaded an innocent kid. He has poked a hornet's nest the size of a mountain. Donovan Pike, the weasel prosecutor, looks like he is going to be physically ill. His slick confidence has evaporated, replaced by the raw, primal fear of a small animal that has just realized it is in a cage with a tiger. The two men in suits move with silent, practiced efficiency. They take up positions behind Eleanor, flanking her like sentinels. One of them holds a thin, state-of-the-art tablet. The power dynamic in the courtroom has not just shifted. It has been utterly and irrevocably shattered. This is no longer Judge Alastair Finch's kingdom. It is Eleanor Vance's operation. What is this? Finch stammers, his booming voice reduced to a pathetic squeak. This is highly irregular. You have no authority here. This is my courtroom. Eleanor takes a step forward. The two men move with her. Your courtroom, she says, a hint of something that might be amusement, or perhaps pity, in her tone. Alastair, this room is a public trust. A trust you have violated. A trust you have corrupted for personal gain and the satisfaction of your own petty bigotries. She looks at Sarah Jenkins, who is staring, wide-eyed and open-mouthed, at the scene unfolding before her. Miss Jenkins, Eleanor says, her voice softening slightly. You did well. You fought bravely in an unjust war. Now, please, allow me to relieve you of command. She turns her attention back to the bench. Let us begin with the so-called evidence, shall we? Or rather, the complete and utter lack thereof. She nods to the man on her right. He steps forward and hands the tablet to the stunned bailiff. Bailiff, please present this to the court, Eleanor commands. The bailiff, moving like a man in a trance, takes the tablet and places it on the witness stand, angling the screen so the judge and jury can see. On that device, Eleanor explains, her voice ringing with clarity, you will find the geolocational data from Marcus's cellular phone. Data that Mr. Pike, in his zeal for a conviction, conveniently failed to subpoena. It shows a continuous, uninterrupted signal pinging from the vicinity of Northwood High School's athletic fields between 5:30 p.m. and 6:10 p.m. She lets that sink in. As you can see from the map overlay, that is 57 miles from the convenience store that was robbed at 6:15. An impossible distance to cover in 5 minutes, even for a track captain. A murmur sweeps through the jury box. Eyes that were hard with conviction now flicker with doubt and confusion. Furthermore, Eleanor continues, her tone relentless, swipe to the next file. You will find a sworn, notarized affidavit from Coach Miller, along with time-stamped security footage from the school's parking lot. It clearly shows Marcus leaving the locker room at 6:07 p.m. and boarding the city bus at 6:10 p.m., and the bus's own GPS data confirms its route, which goes nowhere near the scene of the crime. She is not just introducing doubt. She is systematically, methodically, and brutally dismantling the prosecution's entire case with cold, hard, irrefutable fact. She turns her gaze upon Donovan Pike. He visibly flinches, as if her stare were a physical blow. Mr. Pike, she says, her voice dangerously quiet. A very interesting career you've had. An impressive conviction rate. Especially in cases prosecuted before this specific judge. And almost exclusively against defendants represented by overworked, under-resourced public defenders. Pike starts to sweat, beads of moisture popping up on his forehead and upper lip. My colleagues, Eleanor says, gesturing to the two men behind her, have developed a sudden and intense interest in your career. And your finances. The second man in the suit speaks for the first time. His voice is a monotone, devoid of inflection, which makes his words all the more terrifying. Donovan Pike. We have found a series of unusual deposits into a shell corporation registered in your wife's maiden name. These deposits, totaling over $200,000 in the last 18 months, coincide perfectly with the dates of 3 major real estate zoning variances approved by Judge Finch. Pike's knees seem to buckle. He grabs the edge of his table to steady himself. The man continues, the source of the funds is a holding company owned by a Mr. Leo Garrison, a prominent real estate developer. Curiously, Mr. Garrison was in a bitter rivalry with the owner of the property where this alleged robbery took place. A rivalry that was holding up a very lucrative construction project for Mr. Garrison. Eleanor picks up the thread. A convenient robbery. A convenient arrest. A convenient conviction. All designed to put pressure on Mr. Garrison's competitor. All orchestrated by you and the men on the bench. And my grandson, an innocent boy, was to be the pawn you sacrificed to achieve your grubby little aims. Finch finally finds his voice, a high-pitched shriek of denial. Lies. This is a travesty. A conspiracy. You are fabricating evidence. This is a mockery of justice. You have no authority here. Eleanor looks at him, and for the first time, a flicker of emotion crosses her face. It is contempt. Pure, unadulterated contempt. Authority, Alastair, is not bestowed by a robe or a title. It is not the power to ruin lives from the safety of a high bench. True authority is the quiet, methodical accumulation of truth. And the truth, Alastair, is that you are a common criminal. She begins to list his crimes, her memory flawless, her delivery precise. On May 12th of last year, you dismissed a drunk driving charge against the son of a city councilman in exchange for a vote in your favor on a judicial pension bill. We have the text messages. On September 3rd, you deliberately suppressed exculpatory evidence in the trial of Maria Flores, sentencing her to 10 years, because her brother was a union organizer who was causing problems for one of your financial backers. We have the email from your private account. On December 19th, you accepted a cash bribe of $50,000, delivered to your chambers in a Christmas gift basket, to ensure a favorable verdict in a civil suit involving a construction company that had used faulty materials. We have your clerk's sworn testimony. With each charge, another layer of Finch's composure is stripped away. He goes from blustering denial to sputtering rage to wide-eyed, silent terror. He is no longer a judge. He is a cornered animal, seeing the walls of the trap he never knew existed closing in around him. But all of that, Eleanor says, her voice dropping again, is just business. It's the sordid, predictable corruption of a weak man given too much power. She takes another step closer to the bench. What you did to my grandson today, that was personal. You enjoyed it. You savored his fear. You fed on his family's pain. You looked at a child and saw a monster, not because of what he did, but because of who he is. Her voice fills with a righteous fire. You used your office, this sacred room, as a stage for your own racism, your own deep-seated prejudice. And you thought you could get away with it because you looked at me, an old woman in a simple dress, and you saw nothing. She lets the accusation hang in the air, a final, damning indictment. But the people in this room, the people you have lorded over for years, they deserve to see the real you, Alastair. Not the judge. The man. The first man in the suit raises his phone. He taps the screen. A crackle of static fills the courtroom, coming from the built-in speaker system. And then, a voice. Alastair Finch's voice. It is unmistakable, laced with arrogance and casual cruelty. It is a recording, crystal clear. Just give the kid the max, Pike, the recorded voice says. We need to make an example of this one. Another one off the streets. His kind are all the same. It's in their blood. A second voice, Pike's oily tenor, replies. What about the family? Any chance of an appeal? There is a chuckle on the recording. Finch's chuckle. Are you kidding me? Look at them. The grandmother looks like she can barely afford the bus fare. Who's she going to call? Ghostbusters. Just bury him. No one will ever know the difference. The audio clicks off. The silence that follows is heavier, more profound, than any that has come before. It is the silence of absolute, horrifying revelation. The jury stares at the judge, their faces a mixture of shock, disgust, and betrayal. The gallery is in an uproar, shouts of "monster" and "corrupt" echoing off the mahogany walls. Finch is broken. His face is slack, his eyes vacant. He is a king whose castle has just been turned to dust around him. The main doors at the back of the courtroom swing open. 2 uniformed United States Marshals enter. They are large, grim-faced men who move with an unhurried, inexorable purpose. They walk down the center aisle, their footsteps echoing like a funeral dirge. They pass the defense table. They pass the prosecution's table. They walk straight to the judicial bench and ascend the 2 steps. One of the marshals looks down at the shattered men in the chair. "Alastair Finch," the marshal says, his voice flat and official, "you are under arrest by order of the United States Department of Justice for violations of Title 18, Section 242 of the U.S. Code, deprivation of rights under color of law, as well as multiple counts of conspiracy, bribery, and obstruction of justice." Finch does not respond. He is staring at Eleanor, a look of pure, uncomprehending hatred in his eyes. The marshal reaches down and gently, but firmly, pries the gavel from Finch's numb fingers. He places it on the bench. The other marshal takes a step behind the judge's chair. He reaches forward, takes hold of the collar of the black judicial robe, and with a single, decisive pull, strips it from Finch's shoulders. The robe, the symbol of his power and his corruption, slithers to the floor like a dead snake. Exposed in his white shirt and tie, Alastair Finch looks small. He looks pathetic. He looks like exactly what he is, a criminal in a bad suit. The first marshal produces a pair of handcuffs. The sharp, metallic click as they lock around Finch's wrists echoes through the silent courtroom. It is the sound of a world being set right. As they pull him to his feet, Finch's eyes find Eleanor's one last time. "You," he rasps, his voice a broken whisper. "You did this to me." Eleanor Vance meets his gaze. Her expression is not triumphant. It is not vengeful. It is weary, as if she is tired of dealing with the petty cruelties of men like him. "No, Alastair," she says, her voice just for him. "You did this to yourself." She pauses, then delivers the final, cutting blow. "You just thought no one was watching." The marshals lead him away, a disgraced, shuffling old man, his head bowed in the ultimate public humiliation. Perp walked out of the kingdom he thought was his forever. The fallout is swift. The fallout is brutal. The fallout is, in a word, just. Alastair Finch, stripped of his title, his power, and his dignity, faces a federal tribunal. The evidence compiled by Eleanor's agency is overwhelming, a mountain of corruption so vast it is breathtaking. He is convicted on 17 of 19 counts. The judge, a stern, no-nonsense woman from out of state, looks down at the men who once held her position and delivers a sentence that is a perfect mirror of his own cruelty. "It is the finding of this court," she declares, "that you used your sacred office as a weapon against the very people you swore an oath to protect. You poisoned the well of justice for profit and for prejudice. You are a disgrace to the robe you once wore." He is sentenced to 30 years in a federal supermax prison. No parole. His assets are seized. His lavish home, his luxury cars, his inflated pension, all are liquidated to help fund a restitution program for his victims. He ends his days in a concrete box, a forgotten old man haunted by the memory of the grandmother he was foolish enough to underestimate. Donovan Pike, in a desperate attempt to save himself, sings like a canary. He testifies against Finch, against the real estate developer, against the corrupt city officials. His cooperation earns him a reduced sentence, but it does not save him from ruin. He is disbarred, his name struck from the legal rolls in disgrace. He serves 7 years in a medium-security prison, emerging a broken man with no prospects and a name that is synonymous with corruption. The arresting officers who provided false testimony in Marcus's case are fired immediately. They face charges of perjury and obstruction of justice. Their careers are over, their reputations destroyed. The system, which Finch had bent to his will, turns on his enablers with a vengeance. For the heroes, the world transforms. All charges against Marcus are, of course, immediately dismissed by the U.S. Attorney's Office, with a formal, public apology. His record is not just cleared, it is expunged, every trace of the nightmare erased as if it never happened. A few weeks later, a letter arrives at their home. It is from a newly established educational trust, the Foundation for Future Leaders. The foundation, funded by a series of anonymous, untraceable donations, offers Marcus a full, 4-year scholarship to the university of his choice, including law school, should he choose to pursue it. He does. He graduates top of his class from Georgetown Law and dedicates his life to defending the wrongly accused, a warrior for justice forged in the fires of injustice. Sarah Jenkins, the young public defender, finds her life changed as well. She is hailed as a hero in the press, the lawyer who stood up to a corrupt judge. She receives a job offer from one of the country's most prestigious civil rights law firms. The offer comes with a starting salary triple what she was making, and an endowment to start a new Innocence Project branch in her city, funded by the very same Foundation for Future Leaders. She accepts, and becomes one of the most feared and respected defense attorneys in the nation, a dragon slayer in her own right. The systemic change is profound. The investigation into Finch's reign of terror uncovers a web of corruption that leads to the indictment of 2 city councilmen, a state senator, and more than a dozen police officers. A full-scale judicial review is launched. Over the next 2 years, more than 67 of Finch's past convictions are overturned. Dozens of innocent men and women, victims of his biased rulings and backroom deals, walk free. The entire courthouse is cleaned out, a fresh start built on the rubble of the old, corrupt regime. 2 years later, the courtroom is the same, yet entirely different. The dark mahogany walls have been cleaned, the heavy drapes replaced with blinds that let the sunlight stream in. The air feels lighter, cleaner. The seal of the state on the wall seems less like a predator and more like a guardian. In the gallery, Eleanor Vance sits with her grandson. Marcus is no longer a terrified boy. He is a young man, confident and assured, home for a visit from law school. He wears a suit that fits him perfectly. They are not here as victims. They are here as observers. At the defense table, Sarah Jenkins, poised and formidable, delivers her closing argument. Her voice is strong, unwavering, as she defends a young woman accused of a crime she did not commit. On the bench sits a new judge, a woman known for her sharp mind and her unwavering commitment to fairness. She listens to Sarah's argument intently, her expression thoughtful and impartial. The jury returns a verdict. Not guilty. Sarah's client weeps with relief, hugging her lawyer. Sarah looks over at the gallery and her eyes meet Eleanor's. She gives a small, grateful nod. A nod that says, "Thank you. You made this possible." Eleanor simply smiles, a warm, genuine smile. She puts an arm around Marcus's shoulders as they stand to leave. She thinks about the nature of power. Alastair Finch thought power was a gavel, a robe, a booming voice that could shatter lives. He was wrong. That is not power. That is just noise. True power is quiet. It is the unwavering conviction to protect the ones you love. It is the patience to observe, to gather facts, to wait for the perfect moment to strike. It is the inner strength that allows you to appear weak when you are at your most dangerous. Arrogance, she muses, is the ultimate vulnerability. Prejudice is a self-inflicted blindness. Men like Finch build their castles on foundations of sand, convinced they are impenetrable fortresses, right up until the moment the tide of truth washes them away. And sometimes, she thinks, as she walks out into the bright sunshine with her grandson, the most powerful person in any room is the one that arrogance and prejudice have rendered completely invisible.